Welcome to Cycling Fashion Week, the only podcast in the world that looks at cycling purely from an aesthetic point of view, where we want things to look good. We are very superficial about it, but that's important. I'm your host, Alex. I am joined by my co-hosts, Tony and Warren. And as usual, Cycling Fashion Week is brought to you by our partners and our good friends at leclub.cc. Le Club is your go-to destination for the season's premium cycling apparel. You can shop brands like MAP, Universal Colors, Fingers Crossed, Quack, Alba Optics. In fact, they just launched Albion in the past week, UK brand Albion, a favorite of Cycling Fashion Week. They also have VeloFlex tires, handmade in Italy. You want to flex on people with your tires, get yourself some VeloFlex at Le Club. Demand more from your cycling experience. They continue to release new brands and categories on leclub.cc, and not to mention the finest coffee in the business. Warren and Tony, how is it going this week?
Going pretty well.
Yeah.
We've finally got some weather, a little bit of weather here, so we've been out on some outdoor rides. Life is getting there. Cycling life is coming.
So guys, we've got another huge episode this week. I feel like I say that every week these days because we always have huge episodes. We've been very fortunate with guests recently. A couple of weeks ago, we had our good friend David Miller, former pro cyclist, founder of Chapter 3, come on the podcast, talk to us about his cycling philosophy, his ethos in terms of cycling style. Go back and listen to the episode on Spotify or Apple Podcasts if you missed it. This week, we have other very special guests. We have Stephen Muslin and Ben Juswen from the Australian kit brand Attaquer. They're going to be joining us to talk about the history of the brand, the role that Australia has played in making cycling cool on a global basis. And they're also going to join us for the Canal segment, where we throw something in the Canal that we absolutely hate. We're giving them an opportunity to throw something into the Sydney Harbor to join the movement of throwing stuff in the Canal. So huge episode again this week. A couple of weeks ago with our friend David Miller, we talked about the rise of influencer culture and brand ambassadors. And we actually threw the idea out there of having a segment that we would call the secret brand ambassador. So this is kind of modeled after our good friends at Cycling Tip. They have a segment called the Secret Pro, which is actually one of my favorite features that they do on their excellent website, where it's someone from the pro peloton. We don't know who it is, but kind of telling us about life in the peloton, the ins and outs, the things that we don't know about what goes on in professional cycling. And essentially, yeah, he opens it up to us, the mere mortals. So what we're going to do here, we actually have someone who is a brand ambassador for one of the big cycling brands that we're not going to say who the brand is. We're not going to say who the person is, but he agreed to share with us his contract as a brand ambassador, what he's required to do, what he gets. And because we were very interested to know, what do the brands require from the brand ambassadors? Are the brand ambassadors allowed to sell kit after receiving it for free? So actually, guys, why don't you take it from here? We can discuss maybe this person's obligations under the brand ambassadorship contract.
I'll go because I feel like it was my rant about ambassadors selling kit they're getting for free on Facebook just being kind of a weird seeming thing. But I was surprised in his contract that there wasn't a single clause about resale or anything like that. And especially because of the stature of this brand, like it's quite a big brand. That said, he did say he's like a bit more of a racer competitor. So I think he's maybe more focused on that and less on maybe the content generation, though there's a surprisingly low number of photos that he had to give to the brand. I think it was 10 for the year total, which to me seems pretty reasonable. Like I think in that episode I mentioned how Tony and I had a team and we were negotiating a clothing sponsor, and they wanted 3 to 4 Instagram posts a week. And it was just like, who's capable of doing that? And we ultimately declined because we didn't want to do that. Otherwise, like a lot of stuff is pretty standard. It was like how much Kitty would get in a dollar amount and that kind of thing. And
There's actually 3,000 euros worth of kit,
yeah,
and that's retail price for a year of the contract. So actually
it's pretty good.
pretty decent amount of kit when you look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, the influencers, ambassadors, people, they seem to in general get a lot of stuff. And I mean, I'm sure part of that is that these brands, because they're a marketing aspect, they want their newest stuff on people, right? They want their sort of, the forefront of that. So I think that is sort of a great deal of it. And I think that's kind of where some of the interest of selling or what you do with the kit that you didn't wear as much, or some of the older stuff that you've only worn a little bit, comes in, is that like you're getting this sort of advantage because you're the marketing portion, and the brands are going to say, well, we got a new thing, we got to get it out to our ambassadors, we got to get it out, visually. And so I think that's where it's kind of interesting to see whether selling whether there's a moral quandary, because you're getting a lot, not necessarily because you deserve it. I mean, I guess maybe I shouldn't get into deserve, but because of it's just sort of the style that I believe the brands are marketing, where they want the newest thing out in the media as much as possible. So they're going to kind of keep sending you that stuff.
So I looked at the contract. I didn't find it too restrictive either. There's a couple of things I thought were interesting. So obviously we talked about the amount of kit that the person's getting. So 3,000 euros worth of kit for the 1 year, which is the contract duration. So there's a couple of things that are interesting in there. It says the ambassador shall use all the clothing supplied on all occasions involving contact with the public. So if you're, on social media or anything, obviously have to wear that kit, can't wear anything else. I thought it was interesting as well that the ambassador shall report comments and suggestions received from athletes or other people using the kit in order to improve the technical performance of the kit. So I thought that was pretty cool that they're not just asking you to kind of showcase or model the kit. They're actually looking for actual feedback in terms of the kit. And there was another clause I thought was interesting, where it says that the ambassador agrees to participate in appearances for a maximum of 3 days per contract year. These events can include photo shootings, trade fairs, dealer events, other events. And so, part of the reason why we started talking about brand ambassadors was because of that big sort of ambassador get together that Panama Studios had in Mallorca, where they kind of got all the ambassadors together, I guess, briefed them on the brand, showed them the new collection, and then went on a bunch of rides and probably shot a bunch of content. This probably seems like something that all of the main brands do overall. It certainly seems standard from reading that contract over here.
Aside from this contract, we also had somebody who's sort of a friend of the podcast, but he's a photographer, and a good friend of his works for a major Canadian bike brand. They have a mountain bike factory team. Don't worry, we're not going to start talking about mountain bike, but he provided this piece of info that we didn't really think. I certainly didn't think about when going on my rant or tangent about selling free kit. On this mountain bike factory team, the riders are paid so poorly that they're encouraged to sell their free kit to kind of compensate for the not great wages. So, if these ambassadors are competitors and they're racing and stuff like that, and maybe they are being encouraged to actually sell their kit online just to, make a bit of extra money.
I mean, I didn't think at that point either. And I think, to be honest, is quite fair. And not even just the racers. I mean, I do, I think the influencer world, social media is a easy target and a little bit of fun to make fun of, but I do think there's some work put behind it.
Oh yeah.
And if they're not sort of getting a monetary, as much as, I think when you don't get a lot of free kit, it seems very exciting. Why would anybody sort of scoff at it? But it is possible that they're encouraged, or at least not explicitly told not to, as a way, if they're putting in a lot of work for these brands as sort of a piece of marketing to make a little extra money. So I do think that that's a fair statement, and it could be even possible for the brand. They could understand that, them giving away their stuff that, at retail is sort of sometimes astronomically priced, but at wholesale may be a little more reasonable, and letting these people sort of, sell it to sort of make up for the fact that, they are a big, these ambassadors, especially the ones on social media, are a big face of the brands. They're really important to the marketing of these brands. And so, I think that that's a fair point, and could be, again, highly possible that either it might even just be a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hey, listen, you guys are doing a lot of work for us. We can't give you a salary or money, but if you want to, sell some of the extra kit, make a little extra, then that's fine by us. So I do think that, we may have been a little harsh in our criticism without thinking that part through.
I mean, but that's sort of what we do, right? Is make hot takes and then walk them back the next episode when we've realized our mistakes.
We're not a facts podcast. Everyone knows that.
All right. So if there's other brand ambassadors out there that want to send us their contracts so we can take a look at it, please do so. cyclingfashionweek@gmail.com. We're not going to reveal the brand. We're not going to reveal the person. We're professional about it. So thank you to this particular brand ambassador who sent it to us. I just want to say, several weeks ago, I threw something into the Canal, and actually, speaking of which, the brand got back to me, and I thought that was a really cool story, and I want to give them a shout out. So I threw the Euro style chamois butter cream into the Canal several weeks ago because the Euro style has menthol in it, and it has that little Euro tingle on your butt. And we're fans of all things Euro here on Cycling Fashion Week, but I got to say the Euro tingle on my butt, that was a little too much. And I'm a USA guy when it comes to the tingle on my butt. I don't want none of it. And so the good people over at Chamois Butter, which is a family-owned company, they're based in the United States. Kara over at Chamois Butter, she reached out and she said, when I heard that you guys were throwing the butter in the Canal, I started wondering, oh my God, this is going to be terrible. But I listened to the segment and it was actually not too bad because you guys, you said nice stuff about us. You like the brand. You've been using our products, that it was really the Euro tingle on your butt that you didn't like so much. And she acknowledged that, look, the Euro tingle, it's not for everyone. There's people that swear by it. There's people that don't like it. And Kara was very nice to actually send me some regular chamois butter as well. So I just want to give them a shout out because they're, on top of making a great product, they also seem like very nice people, family-owned company, Chamois Butter. So thank you to Kara over at Chamois Butter for that.
Yeah, thanks. I just bought a bottle of chamois butter at full price 2 days ago.
Okay, so for our first segment today, we're going to do a quick news segment. We're going to review some of the news from the world of cycling kit. And as you know, last week on Friday, the Giro d'Italia kicked off in Hungary. And some teams actually came out with special kits for the Giro. So we thought it was our duty here on Cycling Fashion Week to review those kits. There are 2 kits that we're going to talk about. The first one is the Alpecin kit worn by the great Mathieu van der Poel. And the second kit is the kit from EF Education First, which has, I guess, used us to pretty innovative, pretty cool kits over the years, especially when they broke the internet with their collaboration with Palace Skateboards at the Giro d'Italia, I think a couple of years ago, which basically blew Tony and Warren's minds given their former links to the skateboarding world. But this year they came out with a variation of their kit. Obviously, their main kit has pink. Can't do that for the Giro. It creates too much confusion with the Maglia Rosa. So they came out with a new kit, which is, I guess, a multicolored with some black, green, purple-ish or pink as well. I wouldn't call it splatter quite because that's not really the pattern that's in there, but that's what they do. So let's start with the EF Education kit. Guys, what did you think of it?
To me, it just looks like the kit they've been wearing this year, but they like inverted the colors. It's like they made more green and less pink. I could be wrong about that. That's just like first glance at it. I didn't see like a big story behind it like the EF sometimes does. So people are going to compare their Giro kits to the Palace kit for a long time. So it's obviously not as bold as that. I don't hate it, but it's just, I don't know, it's a little boring to me.
I mean, I don't know how you say it's boring just because it's not different enough from their like everyday kit. It's still like really wild. And we're recording this just after the first stage of the Giro, and they have the helicopter shots over, and you can just like see them so clearly, even though it's not necessarily like the brightest color, like just that ostentatious sort of over the top pattern, you can just see them in the bunch so clearly, which is sort of part of the battle of these kits. And I think that just like I've been on record saying this before, that these pro teams, you can't do minimalist. You've got to kind of be clever. And I think that just the fact that they go wild, I'm for it. Now, I did see a thing that I thought was smart, that it does sort of look like the fabric you'd get on like a bus, like a mega bus or something, on the seats of a mega bus. So I think there's a bit of accuracy there. But overall, I like bold and wild in my pro tour.
I just wanted to clarify. I was saying boring in the scheme of EF kits, because I feel like they've set such a high standard for, as you said, for being bold and really standing out. I'm going to still stick by my take that I don't think it's that great, but I hear what you're saying. It definitely stands out in the peloton.
I love the megabus, the Greyhound bus take. I think it's a great take. When I looked at that kit initially, what it made me think of, initially I thought, wait, did EF Education First, did they drop Rafa as their kit sponsor to go with our good friend Alex Ostroy over at Ostroy? Because this looks like a kit that could have been made by Ostroy, like that very kind of maximalist pattern kit. If you look at the Ostroy website, they got the Punk Flowers jersey. They've got a variety of floral patterns as well. They've got some more kind of geometric patterns like the Karen mesh jersey. Like, to me, this is an Ostroy kit that they're bringing into the pro peloton. So, I mean, kudos to our good friend Alex Ostroy, friend of the podcast, for influencing the pro peloton here. I like the kit personally. I think it's pretty nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think wherever the inspiration comes from, they do a good job. You notice the kit, you notice the sponsors, but they kind of integrate the sponsors well into the design. It doesn't look like they were just sort of heat pressed onto a sort of single color jersey or something. So it's clever. And I think, I wish more teams would sort of invest in that effort, and that the Peloton would be just sort of this sort of wild west of crazy designs, as you sort of see those great helicopter shots over top. You're right, Warren, in the grand scheme of things, maybe a little more subdued than they've done before, but in this, they are also doing the right thing. They're pushing it, and other teams need to look to them.
Okay, let's move on to the Alpecin Fenix kit. So they released a new kit for the Giro. The color, I guess, is a light khaki green. It's, the design of the jersey isn't all that different. They just basically changed the color. They've got some pretty basic black bibs. They're stamping the big red Alpecin logo throughout the kit, both on the bibs and on the jersey. But essentially the key element of that jersey is the color, that sort of light grayish khaki green that definitely earth tones playing in that range of colors. So guys, what did you think about it?
We actually had a listener reach out to us on Twitter to ask us what our thoughts are, because apparently a lot of people are ragging on this kit and saying it's ugly. And actually, Alex, I think the bibs are like a bit of a gray color, like watching the first stage today.
On the sides, it's got some gray.
Yeah.
But the crotch area is a dark kind of black.
Yeah, gray, or the sides look like a gray or
a fade.
Charcoal, which is different from their navy blue kit normally. And I think they're calling it Commander Green, and it's just to, up our journalism bona fides. It's because Fenix, one of the team sponsors, has developed some high quality flexible wall covering X-kin. So it's actually like promoting some new, I don't even know what that wall covering means, but it's promoting some new.
Alpecin is caffeine shampoo, right?
Yeah, it's caffeine shampoo. Yeah. Anyway, so it's promoting some new product. I already responded on Twitter. I like the green. I like the shade of like khaki, muted sage, whatever you would call it. It maybe clashes with the red a little bit, but I kind of like how it makes the red pop in a way. And it doesn't pop in the same way that the EF kit does, like Tony was saying, but I don't know. I like it, and I appreciate the fact they're at least trying different things. Like, they didn't need to change their kit for the Giro. Sure, it's promoting some weird ass product, but at least they're in line with what they did last year for the Tour. That I think it was only on the first day, but they wore that kit paying tribute to Van der Poel's grandfather. I just appreciate they're also trying something a bit different.
I don't understand people ragging on this kit. I mean, earth tones are all the rage right now in most cycling brands. Like people are paying top dollar to get that color from their favorite cycling brands. And in a way, like if that jersey, instead of saying Alpecin in red, if it said PAS mechanism, or, if it said map or whatever, like people would be paying $350 for it. So I guess the same people that are ragging on this kit are the people that are paying that kind of money to get that color in their favorite brands. So I just don't see, I don't know how they could have gone wrong with that kit. It's a very safe choice overall. From my perspective, it looks pretty good.
So I'm going to rag on this kit because I think, the context of the world tour and your design efforts there are different than your everyday cyclist and what people are looking for. And although I agree the color itself, if it was on a sort of blank jersey with some sort of minimal branding of, one of our favorite brands, it'd probably be a pretty nice thing. But in terms of the pro Peloton, and because there is sponsors required, it looks lazy, very lazy. Like the color's nice, but someone took out a bunch of Pantone swatches, had at the morning coffee, someone said, okay, that, they voted on this one. And then they just took the exact same logo configuration as their previous and slapped it on. There's no effort to it. I just think that I think that you can't compare what's going on in sort of everyday recreational cycling fashion with what the pro Peloton should be doing, especially because we know we're all big rock racing fans and of that ilk. So I think that they could have done something, put a little more effort than changing the color. So I think it's not ugly, it's lazy.
What do you think about, what if they did, as a nod to their caffeine shampoo sponsor, what if they did like a coffee bean kit, sort of in the style of rock racing? It was just like visuals of piles of coffee beans or something.
Yes, amazing. Absolutely amazing. Or if it was like suds of like soap that was like dripping down, like when you're washing off the shampoo from your hair, and it's like dripping down the kit, like looks like it's sort of cascading over your shoulder as the water washes you off. Incredible. And then you sort of have like soap bubbles, and that's where the logos are in, like in different size soap bubbles based on what they pay. Like that would be wild. That would be cool. It would be directly linking to their, I guess not to Fenix, but to Alpecin. That would be kind of fun. That would be iconic. Trust me. This is a lazy kit.
Okay, for our next segment this week, we have an interview. We are welcoming Stevan Mozullin and Ben Stevan of Attaquer, the Australian kit brand that we're very fond of on the podcast here. So Stevan and Ben agreed to come on for an interview, and we're going to talk about the brand, going to talk about the origins, the philosophy, and what they do. Ben and Stevan, welcome to Cycling Fashion Week.
Hello. Thanks for having us. Thanks for having us, fellas. Excited.
So first of all, guys, Attaquer or Attaquer?
I guess it depends on where you live. We don't have a preference on it. We kind of allow people to make up their own mind on how it should be pronounced. But us being Australians, we generally say Attaquer. I kind of Americanized or Canadianized that a little bit.
I see that, yeah.
Well
done.
French Canadians are probably going to say Attaquer, and that's the origin of the word. So we're happy with whatever people choose, really.
So I've heard both. I hear in the French-speaking part of Canada, I've actually heard both. So people who speak French, but they think it's Australian, so they go Attaquer. But I've also heard people who, because of how it's spelled, they just assume it's Attaquer. And were you initially going, in spelling the name like that, were you going for a bit of a French vibe in there? Like, were you playing on that ambiguity, or?
We were. It was, we sort of had a bunch of different names. Like we'd listed hundreds of different names for the brand. A lot of them were cycling related terms. And we liked that one because it did have that ambiguity, and it had the French origins, and it means to attack, and it's an aggressive style of rider. And we were like, yeah, this is kind of fun. And it starts with the letter A, so it's early in the alphabet, so we didn't have to go too deep in the list.
And so where are you guys based in Australia?
In Sydney. Our office is in Surrey Hills, which is sort of eastern Sydney.
Yeah,
Sydney.
inner east. We've got a little cafe, shop, and then offices are out the back, Surrey Hill, Sydney.
And so we like to ask all of our guests who, before we talk about the brand and go more in depth on the design philosophy and the aesthetic and what you do, which we'll get to later, but we like to ask our guests, what's their story in cycling? How did you come into cycling? How did you discover it? How long ago? And what was the kind of path towards discovering cycling?
Yeah, I probably got into it early 2000s. I was kind of after the Sydney Olympics. I was kind of interested in it, started doing it as a bit of cross training, actually for rowing at the time, which I was far too short for. Really just couldn't cut the grade there, and then started riding and found I was a lot better at that and started getting better and better. Did a little stint in Europe for a while. Realized I was maybe a bigger fish in a small pond and then a really little fish in a massive pond over there. And then came back and kind of was a bit burnt out maybe from the whole racing scene thing, and then rekindled the love for it a few years after that with a lot of just international mates trips, just excuses to go do awesome trips and eat awesome things and drink and just hang out. That's kind of my pathway to where I am now in cycling.
For me, it's, I guess if I start right back, it's all childhood stuff. Like, I'm a little bit older than you guys, I think, but I remember early memories of barely being able to walk and stealing my sister's bike, and ever since then, like, the only mode of getting around to see your friends on school holidays or after school, it's always like you jump on the bike, you ride to your friend's house. No one's got a mobile phone. It's all like meet up at a spot, hang out on your bikes, little BMX bandits hanging around, riding through the city and building jumps and all the rest of it. And that sort of led to, getting a bit more serious about mountain biking and doing a little bit of racing there. And I still ride mountain bikes fairly regularly. Don't race them though. That, I guess, again, led to road cycling down the path. I started commuting to work for fun, and then that got a bit more serious, and I started doing road cycling recreationally, and then got into Lycra, and that kind of led to starting Attaquer or Attaquer, your choice, as a brand further down the track. And I guess cycling's just always been in my blood and one of my passions.
That early story there, it's kind of sounded like you were retelling the story of E.T. the movie.
It was. It was actually penny farthings, but the E.T. version with basket on the front.
And I find that personally, it's just maybe the impression I have looking at it from the outside, but it feels to me like Australia punches above its weight in terms of its impact on global cycling culture. Like, there's a lot of trends that seem, a lot of brands, a lot of trends that seem to come out of Australia. And obviously, Cycling Tips, very popular website, came from Australia. Map came from Australia. Attaquer came from Australia. And it just seems like Australia has a very strong cycling culture overall. When you look at, just social media, people that seem to be riding in Australia, like the culture seems very strong down under. Would you say that that's accurate?
Yeah, totally. It's a good point. Like, it's based on the size of our population. Yeah, we do punch above our weight for some reason. There's a lot of brands that have come out of Australia, but I guess the weather and the terrain and the climate lends itself to cycling. Why we've had such popularity in cycling, I'm not sure exactly. I can't pinpoint why, but we do have this history of a lot of Australian World Tour riders and a lot of success in racing. It's very accessible in Australia to just get out and ride because we get a lot of dry, sunny days. So lends itself to riding.
It certainly punches above its weight from a design and apparel brand point of view. And I think you kind of have a few sort of strong brands that started out, and then I think they just sort of feed off each other as well. And I think probably challenge each other and keep growing together, both here and definitely internationally too.
I have been outed by Alex and Warren on this podcast as a half Australian. My dad's from Brisbane, and I haven't visited in a few years, but I used to visit often as a kid. And the last time I was there I was into cycling, and I was in Melbourne with a friend. And that is where I first saw sort of what I would call boutique or stylish kit. You guys and Map, and I went to St. Cloud, the St. Cloud shop in Melbourne, and that was sort of the first foray. I had already been riding for years and years and years in Montreal and Toronto, and everything was, club kits or people wearing World Tour. Some guys, maybe ASOS was the one kind of simple kit, and Australia was like the first punch in the face where I was like, oh, you can look cool in cycling stuff. I remember I came back and I said to Warren, we should start a cycling brand. All these people in Australia, they're starting these cycling brands and they're like, they're cool. They look great. Like, it's not this stupid shit. And so like, I feel like, before Panormal, before Universal Colors, before a lot of the brands that have now sort of taken over, it was Australia. I'm sure you guys were big in Sydney, but in Melbourne at the time, like, that's where I notice cycling fashion. Like, we're putting Rafa a little bit to the side because we know what their story is, but in terms of sort of like a more boutique sort of greater thing, I noticed it first riding in Australia before I noticed it anywhere else.
It's interesting that you kind of pinpointed it and you noticed it around that time. Like, when was that? When was that when you were in
2012, maybe something like that? No, but 2014. Sorry, 2014.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because we started in 2012. So it's 10 years this year that we since we launched the brand. And it kind of, again, it came about from myself and Greg at the time were into road bikes. We'd come from dabbling with fixed gear bikes and things like that. And I was working in the fashion industry. Greg was working in the cycling industry. And we personally didn't have kit that we thought we wanted to wear because it was very heavily dominated by club kits. And Rafa was definitely starting to emerge as the big player at the time, for sure. But it didn't resonate with us. We didn't feel like that, I guess, nod to the black and white suffering and the heritage of cycling and that gentlemanly style was something that we were really into. We were more into streetwear and culture and fashion and that kind of thing. So we said, well, let's just make some shit we want to wear and see how it goes. And it's kind of led to this point. So we were like, we initially created that head to toe look where the jersey and bibs were a seamless look and it all matched. And all of the panels had to basically be designed in a certain way so that it looked seamless. And it was this complete head to toe look that sort of didn't exist at the time. And it was very visually different and no one had seen anything like that before. And then a couple of years later, like sort of 2014, a lot of other brands started to emerge and they were kind of creating their own aesthetic based on, again, sort of influence from streetwear and design and fashion. And yeah, there's been an explosion since then over the last 10 years of brands dabbling in that style and that space.
As you mentioned, the 10-year anniversary and the explosion that's sort of gone on in the cycling fashion world, which has led to this incredible podcast that you're lucky enough to be on. What have you seen different? Because you guys were kind of near the sort of forefront of it. You guys are really early on in starting what you're sort of saying a fashion driven, maybe a more streetwear driven. What has happened in the industry? What have you noticed is different? How have you had to sort of react to the boom over the last 10 years?
I think now compared to 10 years ago, cycling's become a lot cooler. It's a lot more fashionable. It's a lot more interesting. Like, it was kind of this niche thing that you almost, in certain conversations, you kind of hide that you're a cyclist. Like, you wouldn't bring it up. Like, if you're out at a bar and you're hanging out and then you have this plan of going for a ride the next morning, you'd kind of just smoke bomb out of there and not tell people that you're just like popping out to the bathroom because you're actually getting a ride in at 5:30 the next morning. Whereas now it's a huge community. Like, it's way more mainstream. There's so many options for people to get into the sport at different levels, wear the sorts of things that they want to wear. There's just so many more access points and ways for people to identify with cycling and their kinds of people. And I think that's only been fast-tracked really over the last few years with COVID too. Like, it was growing big between sort of 10 and 3 years ago, but then, over the last couple of years with COVID, it's gone wild, whether it's people rekindling their early sort of childhood love with the bike, or they're starting fresh and trying something totally new for the first time. It's pretty amazing to see.
And it's interesting what you say that cycling got cool in a sense that before that it wasn't cool. It was just a bunch of guys in Lycra, not doing anything particularly cool, just suffering on a bike for hours. And now it's gotten cool. And I personally believe, I think Australia had something to do with that. I feel that the Australians kind of not dominating the cycling fashion scene, but definitely being a big part of it. They're at least looking at it from outside from Canada. I always thought that there's been an Australian influence on that and that it has been part of making it cool globally. And one question I had as well, just maybe a bit of a segue into what you guys do at Attaquer, but I was looking at your kit and it says very prominently on it, designed in Australia. And then very, very small on the tag, it says made in Italy. And I thought that was really interesting because typically people would invert that. They would put the made in Italy like really big because made in Italy has, it's got provenance, right? It's very prestigious. But you guys, was that a conscious decision to tell your story as we are an Australian brand, we have an Australian heritage, and that's what we do, or was that an unconscious choice that you guys made?
Yeah, no, it was a conscious thing. I guess kind of going back a step to the origins of the brand again. One of my personal goals and ambitions was to try and bring an element of coolness to cycling and introduce people who particularly wouldn't normally be attracted to cycling. Like with our kits, we wanted it to be something that, like, if you've got a creative person or an artist or a designer, they might be sitting on a bus and normally they'd scoff at cyclists on the road. They'd see us and go, oh, that's interesting. That kind of appeals to me, and try and attract these new, cooler, creative types to the sport with that point of difference. And that's why we sort of, again, also we are proud of the fact that we're an Australian brand, and we do manufacture in Italy, but the origin is in Australia. So
it's interesting you said that point about attracting like different people to cycling through like nice kit, because I remember what Tony was talking about. Yeah, when he came back from Australia, that's how I heard about all these like good brands, because that I got into cycling I think around 2013, so I hadn't been in very long. But I remember going to this store to buy my first kit and not liking anything, and they didn't have like brands like Attaquer, Map. It was like Castelli and like, oh, this is like the lame lycra look that I associate with cycling. And I still ended up buying like a Castelli kit because I didn't really have a choice. But then like when Tony came back and he's like, oh, you got to check out these Australian brands, it was like a revelation. And then that led to like me discovering Rafa and all these other brands. But it was just like, oh, you can look like cool on a bike, and that's like interesting kit. And then I think it wasn't long after that I saw somebody wearing one of your artist series. Mm-hmm. I don't remember which one, but I remember just being like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Because it was just like pretty wild.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting it took so long, because the bike is such a beautiful piece of design. And, it's been like that for, over 100 years now. And a lot of people who are sort of, into the bike as a machine are also sort of, into design. There's always been a lot of sort of architects and designers into it. So it's interesting that it took so long for the kit to kind of catch up to the beauty that is a bicycle.
Totally. Yeah. 100% agree.
It's interesting.
It's weird. Like, I know, like Ben was saying before, like people at work that I worked in a creative industry, you'd kind of keep it a bit secretive that you were a cyclist, because it wasn't something that appealed to people. And I think people that I always spoke to, like, why are you so turned off by cycling? Because they didn't understand the beauty and the joy of it. But also there's an element of, that just looks painful. Why would you want to do that?
From a style point of view, though, like I think Australia and certainly the US, Canada, like in the pro peloton, these are new world kind of nations. Like they're not the old European nations that have got many, many years of traditions and templates for how things have been done and expectations for how things should be done. I think in Australia, maybe that's probably played into a few of these brands like us and, some of our competitors, that there was kind of no set way for doing things. Like you weren't expected to wear a certain kind of kit. So we didn't have to break the mold as much over here. Like if say we were launching this brand in Italy, right? If we were launching in Italy or France, like there'd be this expectation and a norm around what you were expected to wear.
You have to follow traditions and rules. And because we're just a big island and we're pretty isolated, we can take risks, try things differently and do it our way.
Probably got a lot of success because postage is so high too.
Some brands out there really define themselves by their aesthetics. So I would think of like, I don't know, Panorama Studios, for example. They've become pretty iconic overall. That's kind of their, they have their look. That's the way they are. So it's really their aesthetics that define them. Other brands, though, define themselves more by the technicality of their clothing or the technology and the innovation. So a brand like Q36.5, for example, they, really pitch themselves as this highly innovative brand. Where do you guys fit in that? Do you see yourselves like in the middle, a little bit more on the design side, on the technical side? Because it's really interesting that you guys are one of the brands that can be pretty innovative on the design side, but having worn your kit, it's one of the stretchiest fabrics that I've worn. Like the kit kind of hugs your body. Like walk us through that a little bit, the tension between these two sides and how you approach it.
We always wanted to be technical, and we always wanted to be premium, hence why we manufacture the majority of our stuff in Italy. And we also want to be an innovator when it comes to, like, we're cyclists, and we want the product to work, and we want it to be, you know, up towards that cutting edge of the market, but we also wanted it to look aesthetically appealing. That's I guess what the entry point is. Like we're attracting people to the brand with the aesthetic and the visual side of things, but once they try it, they're sort of probably like, their introduction to the brand is like, oh wow, that looks interesting or wild, or, you know, it looks different visually from the design perspective. But once they try it, they're sort of like, oh wow, it actually performs way better than what I had anticipated. This is right up there with the best kit, if not the best kit I've ever worn. And that's part of the thing, that it's sort of like this discovery. It's like a journey with the customer, where once they try it and they ride in it, they go, oh wow, okay, I'm coming back again. I really appreciate the quality of this product.
Like, I can speak to a bit more from a marketing and comms point of view. Like it's a constant juggle of trying to communicate those two sides of the story. That it's not just about the design or who we're collaborating with or how it looks, but also trying to get through all those subtle details of the sort of performance and innovation side of the story. Like whether it's, you know, doing certain testing with different materials or sourcing little details from different manufacturers all over the world, whether it be the zipper or the collar or like certain waterproofing materials for a new jacket. You kind of have to get the balance right. I think a lot of people know us as being that design-driven or design-first brand from the early years. So I think it's about making sure we're sort of showing that we've evolved the brand as well from a performance point of view. Like the kit we're doing now, like if we look back at the kit we're doing 10 years ago, there's just chalk and cheese. Very different pieces of kit.
And the customer should be allowed to get both. It shouldn't be one or the other. I can only have performance and I can only have design. We want to deliver both to the customer. We want something that looks aesthetically pleasing and is beautiful, but also performs to the highest possible level. For us, it's not so much of trying to strike a balance. It's giving the customer both.
I have to admit, when I've known about you guys for a long time, but I hadn't owned kit until we received some from you, and I was shocked at the performances. No slight on you. I've had a lot of kit in my life, and sometimes the brands that you think of as design focused, you do feel kind of a lack in the technology or the sort of performance aspect of it. We got some kit from you guys, and all three of us have now worn it extensively, and we sort of can't stop raving about it. A little while ago, we did a top 5 kit brands. I did have you guys in my top 5, but not at number 1. But now, after my experience, and this is not a plug for them. We'll talk shit if they put something bad out, but you guys would be my number 1 now. Like, because the aesthetics has always been there, but then wearing the kit and riding with it, I got some of the all day stuff, and it's been pretty cold in Toronto, and so kind of experience it and seeing like, oh, this is really technical. Because I'm not going to throw any other brands on their bus, but I've got some that the look was beautiful, and you wear it, you go, yeah, I really do look good, which is what's the most important to me personally. But sometimes you go, oh, it's lacking a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with Tony. Like, I've been riding the Race Plus Ultra bib shorts, and previously I was La Passion actually made the bibs I like the most, just because of the strap placement, for whatever reason, worked for me. And I think these might be my new favorite bibs. And yeah, as Tony said, we're blowing a lot of smoke up your ass. It's actually really good. Like, we were like worried that what if it's bad? What do we do? But what I was going to say is it's nice to have that balance, because like when I think of some of the more design driven brands, you associate them with like design and really nice marketing. And not to say you don't have that. You don't really think, oh, this is going to perform great. Or then you have a brand like ASOS, which I will throw under the bus because they're so ugly. But everybody like raves about ASOS bibs being like the best.
Yeah, Warren, that's what I was going to say. We have a friend who works at a bike shop, and we had said some negative things about ASOS, and I saw him and he came to me and he was like, man, like, you got to look into them. You've got to like look at the technology. I went to their factory and all these wind tunnels and all this stuff they use. And I was like, yeah, but I don't want to look terrible. Like I know, I'm sure that they make incredible quality kit. And maybe if I was like a racer or something, maybe I'd be like more into it. But like, I just can't bring myself to wear it. For better or worse, my first choice is usually aesthetics. And so it's nice to get kind of a piece of kit that you think this looks great, and then it sort of performs. You've done a very good job of marrying the two pieces.
Thank you.
Right. We've nailed it.
Very kind words. Thank you. Yeah.
And guys, tell us about, because obviously the design, I take it you guys can do that from the studio. You've got your ideas, but on the performance side of things, like, do you guys travel from Australia to go see your suppliers over in Italy? Like, walk us through that process a little bit.
Yeah, we do. We haven't in the last 2 years because of COVID, so everything's remote and sending samples back and forth. But we work with a lot of different fabric mills for starters, and we're always sourcing new trims and fabrics and just trying to keep up with the latest tech and the latest innovation. But yeah, there's a bunch of different factories that we work with for constructing the garments as well, and there's a lot of sampling going back and forth and testing. So yeah, we do. We used to travel obviously a lot more, but now we've kind of become accustomed to, a lot of Zoom calls and working remotely, which isn't a bad thing.
A lot of back and forth and sending. Like we'll get sent a whole bunch of stuff, and then we'll try some stuff here locally, and then it just won't turn out, and then that won't go to market.
Yep. The drawback of not traveling over the last couple of years is things take a little bit longer. You can a couple of days face to face with your factory, you can achieve a lot more quickly than you can, over the course of weeks and weeks and months of Zooms and emails.
But you guys, the thing about you guys too is if you want to travel to, I'm assuming it's like northern Italy, Lake Garda, whatever, wherever the Italian cycling fabric industry is based, it's not like you guys are based in London or Girona. Like it's a little more complicated than that for you guys. You have to cross the entire planet.
It's a much bigger journey, but being an Australian, it's par for the course. You just accept it. Anywhere you want to go is going to take you a minimum of 14 to 24 hours on a plane.
So guys, we've talked about the technical side of things. Let's talk about design. Where do you guys take inspiration from? What's is there a muse for Attaquer? Like where's the inspiration coming from?
We take inspo from a lot of different places. Like we don't, we have some branding guidelines and rules that we do tend to stick to, but a lot of it essentially does come down to personal taste and what we like at the time. So we're generally evolving with things that we're always changing as individuals, and trends change. Things that we liked 12 years ago, we won't necessarily like today. So the brand comes on the, journey with us as individuals, and it evolves. And depending on what we're into at the time, you'll see that influence in the product and the aesthetic. So it's interesting, we can take influence from all sorts of places, like just random typography, or from an outdoors brand or a streetwear brand or something fashion related that we've seen. And we kind of put all these moods and looks together, and then we'll fine tune it and decide what the direction will be for the next season and go from there. And then it kind of evolves and appears on kit.
And you guys are interesting because you also play a little bit between what I would say are the two poles in the two polar opposites in cycling kit design, the minimalist side of things and the maximalist side of things.
Yeah.
I love a good block color kit, a good minimalist simple kit, but I also recognize that we might be a bit at peak minimalism right now, or we might be in a bit of a minimalism bubble.
100%.
And I'm a little sad about it because I like a good block color kit, and I always tell myself I want to be a little bolder on the bike in terms of what I wear. But ultimately, I always find myself drawn to the simple things, the block colors, and you guys do that very well. But on the other hand, you also have the artist series, which is really unique, which I don't think we can call minimalist. I think that's a little bit more on the maximalist side.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how you straddle those two extremes, so to speak, and also about how the artist series or the artiste series, as I like to call it, came on board.
I can start. We can probably both speak to that. I think you're right. Like what's going on in cycling at the moment's really interesting or kind of not interesting as well. Like everything's kind of going full circle to where it was almost a decade ago. And like so many things are like blurring back into looking same. I think that's kind of a risky point for us. And like we need to kind of stay true to a lot of that artist stuff that we set out to create in the first place that kind of differentiates us. But then it's also challenging because we need to do the core stuff, like the day in, day out stuff, and then cater for different kinds of customers that identify with Attaquer, because you might get some of our really loyal customers might want to wear just the fun stuff on the weekends kind of thing. Like it's a special occasion kind of kit. It's not an everyday kind of kit. So it's just getting the balance between those two things, really.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys are saying. Like it does feel like we're in this sort of peak minimalist bubble where it's just purely block colors and whose logo appeals to you most, because everything's looking very, very sort of similar. Like back when we started, we started with artist series design, and we were working with people who were literally friends of ours. They were either a graphic designer, they might have been a graffiti artist, they were a streetwear designer working for a brand, and we got them to design our limited collections, and we'd just come up with a theme. They'd create some crazy ass designs, and that would be our limited range for the season. But in tandem, at exactly the same time, we were doing our core ranges, or we were actually calling it normcore originally, because it was based on that Jerry Seinfeld trend. And even when we started, like we had Jerry Seinfeld
still going in some parts of the world, unfortunately.
Yeah. So we called it normcore originally, and that launched at the same time as what we were launching the artist series, and it was purely just block colors, everyday kind of kit for training or racing. And we'd Photoshop Jerry Seinfeld's head on the collateral at the time and called it normcore. And then, that we changed it to, the intention was to always just call it the core range at the time, and using the Jerry Seinfeld reference was just for fun, because that's how we rolled at the time. I guess, yeah, it's an interesting balance of where things are right now, and is the market shifting away from that peak minimalist again, and where will it evolve to next?
I noticed you just released a new collection that I think is New Frontiers.
Yeah.
That collection, I really like it, but it's almost like, in my mind, like almost a mix between the block colors and some of the more maximalist stuff you've done with the artist series, because you've got like the tie-dye sleeves, but like the block color body, and then some a little wilder stuff with like not a zebra print, but like orange and black things. And so I think it's like a nice balance of I don't know if you'd call it like minimalist or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it is the minimalist. Let's go there.
Yeah, we can in that term. That's a good one, actually.
I just want to add, for the, our consistent listeners out there who know what I've talked about, that from the horse's mouth, I've always said that you've got to build out your wardrobe with some of the minimalist, simple stuff, and then have the exciting, bold, maximalist as sort of special occasion kit. Our friends at Attaquer here, they've just proven me right. You got exciting stuff, and maybe the weekend ride, the big ride, you're trying to peacock, you wear it, but that shouldn't be your only kit. You've got to make sure you got a bit of both.
And with each of those seasonal ranges, we do that mediumalist where it is a balance between the two, because you again, you don't want to be full maximum, you don't want to be full minimum. You want to go somewhere, and I think that mediumalist in the wardrobe has a place for everyday stuff as well. It's the balance between the two.
How did you guys start working with Will Carsola, who worked with you on the artist series doing the designs? And Will Carsola, he's known for his work with Adult Swim, the sort of cartoony kind of TV network. And I see that he's also released some non-fungible tokens on the Ethereum blockchain of some of his work. And obviously some of the paintings or the designs on your artist series, he's the creator of that. Tell us about that encounter, how you started working with him.
That, again, it kind of came from personal preference and vibe at the time. Like when you looked at the previous artist series that we did with Lucas Beaufort, it was really sort of bright and vibrant and fun and happy. And his character, Gus, it's his little outline drawing, and he's holding a flower. It's all about peace and love and beauty. And then I was like, okay, next artist series, we're going full death. We're going blood, gore. Let's just fucking do the absolute opposite. We got chatting and brainstorming, and then it's always sort of like, all right, who's got a friend or an artist that they might know or a connection to somebody, and then we just sort of come up with a list. And if we've got a contact through someone, we'll get an introduction, and then we'll just start chatting and brainstorming with the artist. And if their artwork has to be something that resonates with us first and foremost. We have to like what they're doing. That's kind of the key, I guess, pressure test. If everyone in the office likes the artist's artwork in the first place, we want to work with them. If it's not something that we like, we won't do it.
That's generally how we all sit around and just kind of have a yes/no amongst the whole team. whether we think it's going to work.
What I liked about the Will Carsola stuff, and I've said it on the podcast before, is it's almost, you said it's kind of gory, like monsters, this kind of stuff. But for me, it also sort of evokes like internet meme culture a little bit. Like you could tell that there's an influence from, I don't know if it's looking at too many memes on Twitter or things like that, but I really did enjoy that. I find it's like very playful and very fun. And yeah, cycling can be about the suffering, the more kind of austere nature of cycling. But I think it's pretty cool that there can be the other side of it too, which is fun and kind of funny as well.
Yeah, we want to try and break down that you can be serious but still have fun. Like why can't you do both? Like why do we have to be kind of the stick up our ass sometimes? Like, you know, have some fun. Like at the end of the day, we're just riding bikes and we're trying to hang out with our friends and have a laugh. For a lot of people, that's the main reason why we do it. It doesn't need to be that serious.
I mean, some would say this podcast is serious, but also a lot of fun.
Some would, yeah.
I think you guys have nailed a lot of the kit, a lot of the artist stuff. You've done collaborations with Keith Haring and Basquiat and some of the big ones. Is there any kit that you're embarrassed by, like a series you've released in the last 10 years that you just think, I hope I never see anyone wearing that. I hope that thing doesn't come up in some sort of like warehouse sale. Like you just,
it's in the Canal. That's Attaquer kid that's in the Canal in Cycling Fashion Week parlance.
There would be for sure. Like off the top of my head, I don't know which one I'd pinpoint, but there definitely would be some that I'd now go, you know what, we probably didn't nail that.
Some things
a bit loud, too loud.
Yeah, some things haven't aged well. Like I think it's tricky because there's always one kit that like if we think it's terrible, that kit will identify with someone and someone will be like, no way, that's my favorite kit. Like that's the two of them. Like that's the best. I wish you still made that.
Okay, we won't make you incriminate yourself, but admit that at least you've admitted there is some kit that you guys.
For sure.
I think we disagree on which ones they are.
Yeah, probably. Because that's probably fair to say for sure.
And there's shoots, like there's things we've done in the past and looking back on them now, I'm like, oh, that shoot was a little bit shit.
Yeah. But it's funny, like some of the photo shoots we did in the early days where we were just like in a studio using props and like little fake birds and Legionnaires hats and random shit. It's kind of like, yeah, that style of studio photography, whilst now probably executed a lot nicer, is the trend in some ways. Like people sitting in a studio with like vintage furniture and, you know, posing with a model as opposed to a cyclist and things like that is kind of on trend a little.
Zebra couch was good.
Zebra couch was good. That was the Cipollini recreation.
But I think these are like it's about taking creative risks too. Like if we don't take these risks, like some of them will look back on and be like, oh, that fell a little bit short or whatever. But I think we probably need to keep doing that, not playing it safe, because then we just get back into that everything looking the same again thing.
I want to say it might have been Tom Ford or Michael Kors or something said, this isn't a direct quote, this is a sort of a paraphrase. You know you have style when you look back at your old photos and you cringe. It means you were trying something, you were interested, you weren't sort of staying, you have kind of a fashion sense because sometimes it doesn't work out, but you gave it an effort.
We'll take that. I'll lock that one away.
It's a good ethos.
That's a good one, yeah. That is a good one.
We have some podcasts that we released that we think are cringe at this point, so not going to hold that against you.
So we like to finish up all our interviews with a rapid fire sort of short answer. Could be one word, yes or no, maybe, a couple of things to sort of add. So we're going to hit you with the rapid fire. You guys ready?
Fuck yeah. Let's do it.
All right. Aussie rules or rugby league?
Aussie rules.
Do I have to answer one of those or can I just say neither? Can I say NBA?
Oh, come on.
Yes.
You're breaking the hearts of many
I'll go for
Australians.
Aussie rules. I'll go for Aussie rules. Okay.
Oh, there we go. 4-20 or a Chico roll?
4-20.
So sorry, Tony, can you explain what that is for the non-Australians here?
Okay, 4-20 is a meat pie that kind of usually comes individually wraps. You can get it in Aussie rules or rugby league game. Meat pies are very big in Australia, so it's a popular brand of meat pie. And the Chico roll.
Can I tell you a story about the Chico roll?
Yeah.
So all right, I've got a secret as well. Like you know how we said we keep. So in the past, you kind of keep it undercover that you're a cyclist. I'm actually also an undercover Canadian. I was born in Canada originally. Not that I'm ashamed of that in any way. Quite proud of it. But when I first moved to Australia, I remember I lined up at the school canteen and I ordered a Chico roll, assuming that there was chicken. It's just fucking cabbage.
Yeah, it's like a spring roll.
Where were you born in Canada?
In Kitchener.
Ugh.
Okay.
You're better off.
Yeah. Again, I feel like I can say this as someone with Australian heritage, but sometimes I say that Australia is as if Florida was a whole country. So Australia
Ooh.
or Florida?
I haven't been to Florida, but some of the stuff I'm seeing from there, there's a lot of cool cycling. There's a real scene there. I want to check out Florida, but I'm definitely, you've got to say Australia because we live here.
Weird shit happens in Florida.
Yeah.
man.
Don't go to Florida.
Yeah.
As somebody who's been to Florida way too many times, I've also been to Australia. I don't think the comparison is quite right.
Well, the thing is, if you're going to Sydney and stuff, if you head out, like I had some friends that were Westies,
Yeah.
and kind of you head out a little bit away from the coast, like you get in, you start to see that like that sort of Florida swampland style of people with some interesting characters. Once you sort of head to towards the outback, so you've got to travel Australia well to sort of see the comparison. But there's some obviously beautiful parts of Australia. Sydney's a world-class city. Let's get into some more cycling oriented stuff. White or black socks?
White.
White as well, but do you match the socks to the shoe or do you match the socks to the bib is the question.
Oh, there's the bib. I mean, so the next question was white or black shoes, because we usually talk about matching the sock to the shoe.
I always wear a white shoe. I'd never wear a black shoe, but I think you can match your sock to your helmet and shoe, or you can also just go, you know what, whatever color bib I'm wearing, I should have the same color sock.
But would you ever do a black shoe with a white sock though?
Hell no.
Controversial.
No.
Yes.
Oh, gross.
Yeah.
That's a no. I agree. Okay.
All right, laces or boas?
Boa.
Carbon steel or titanium?
I have all three.
I personally like tie, but I own carbon at the moment.
All three, but tie is my favorite.
All right, what's the best coffee spot in Sydney?
The Attaquer store, Attaquer
Attaquer
Cafe.
store, Surrey Hills.
Perfect.
Open 6:30 a.m. every day.
What's your favorite place you've ever ridden? This can be whole world.
Shit, there's so many good spots. I loved Japan. Cultural experience as well as the riding was so good.
Japan Alps followed by Taiwan.
Can I ask one rapid fire? Sydney or Melbourne?
Oh, we're in Sydney, so
I'm
it's
from
gotta be-
Melbourne.
Oh yeah,
Because I heard that Melbourne is the more kind of artsy city in Australia, and Sydney's the financial center.
Sydney's more about beach lifestyle and generally speaking has like slightly warmer weather. Melbourne's more that cosmopolitan, it's very city vibe and it tends to be a bit more cool and a bit more grey in the rainy period.
Pros and cons to both.
Pros and cons to both for sure.
So the bike riding is probably a little better in Sydney then.
Oh,
Within closer proximity to the city, I would say the riding's better in Sydney. For Melbourne, you've got to travel a little bit further out to get the good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, for our next segment, we're going to do Into the Canal. So Into the Canal, our regular listeners know that it is the segment where we toss something that we absolutely hate from the world of cycling or cycling fashion into Montreal's Lachine Canal. I guess if we were Australian, we'd be tossing it into the Sydney Harbor. So the guys from Attaquer are staying with us for the Canal segment, and we like to give all of our guests on Cycling Fashion Week an opportunity to throw something into the canal. If there's something that they really hate from cycling, could be a piece of kit, could be a habit, it could be anything from cycling that you hate that you could toss into the canal or the Sydney Harbor. All right, this week we'll start with Tony. Tony, what do you got this week?
I have, when people take typically cycling branded shoes, Physique, Specialized, and they paint on other branded, usually big brand logos. I've seen a lot of people making Specialized or Physique shoes. I'm just giving those examples. And then they've painted the Nike swoosh on or the Adidas stripes. And now I'm not saying I'm against painting shoes. I think I've seen some really cool stuff. I like that's the kind of area you can put a lot of personality in. But I don't understand why we're so obsessed with brands that a company that already is invested in cycling and makes nice cycling stuff, we want to alter it to look like a company that has nothing to do with cycling.
There's the brand or company called VeloKicks that I think are Australian. That aren't they kind of known for that? Or does anyone know them?
No, I know VeloKicks. I believe they're Australian. I just don't know if they.
I thought they did some like Nike paint jobs and stuff like that. Maybe
Well,
I'm
then they're in
wrong.
the Canal.
You guys probably know the owner or something.
No, we don't. I've heard of them, and I know what you're saying, and I'm not sure if they were actually doing those logos or if it was just customers of theirs and they're just rebranding or something. I'm not really sure, but
we're big journalists on this podcast. I did no research into that. I just thought of that right now, and
I just see it come up on Instagram, so I don't necessarily like follow who does it, but I just think like, why are you doing this? Like, these shoes are already nice, and if you want to paint like a cool custom colorway or something, you've got a design. Like, I'm super cool with that. I'm really into that, but I just don't understand why someone needs to put like a Nike logo. Nike, Adidas, Reebok. I've seen all of them. It makes no sense. They're not invested in cycling. Just have fun with the brands that are actually trying to produce something for it, and it just looks stupid.
Okay, Tony, can I do my canal for this week?
Of course, Alex.
All right. So earlier today, actually, I took my bike into the shop for a couple of fixes. I was looking at some of the bikes that were in the shop, and I'm noticing a trend in new bike design. If you look at the stems on some of the newer bikes out there, look at some of the dentist brands like Cervelo, BMC, Orbea. Look at those stems. These new, some of them are kind of integrated with the frame or with the handlebars, but others are not integrated, but they just have that new kind of sleek look overall, looking very different from the more traditional stems that you would find on bikes from like 6 or 7 years ago, or even older than that. And I find that these new stems, even if you have a pretty decent drop from the seat to the handlebars, they always look like they have a stack on them. I don't know what it is. The designs are so bulky. Even again, if you have a pretty aggressive position, like a super steep drop from your seat to the handlebar, it looks like there's at least 2 inches of stack there on your stem. And these stems, I don't know if they perform better. I don't really care about that, to be honest. I'm in my late 30s at this point. Performance is not exactly something that I'm out there chasing. But when I look at those stems, they were not designed with aesthetics in mind. I don't know what they were designed in mind with, but they just look awful. And as you know, this podcast is about things that look good in cycling, and that does not look good. And as a result, it's in the Canal. Bring back the old stems, not the quill stems. I mean, the regular stems that we've all been using for the last like 10 years. Bring them back, because these new stems look absolutely awful. They're thrown in the Canal, and I hope they never come back.
I think the Specialized Venge was the first time I saw that really like integrated in that style of stem you're talking about. And it came with the sort of like dipped handlebars. It was like I think one of the first like super aero bikes that was kind of on the market. It was like 15 grand. And I just thought, this thing is so ugly. And I mean, it hasn't aged well. I don't see anybody with it anymore. But like the minute that came out, I just like, that's kind of like solidified my love of like round tube steel titanium bikes. Like, it was like I saw the Venge and was like, if this is the way bikes are going, I'm out.
Warren, what do you got?
I'm gonna throw into the Canal. You guys down in Australia maybe don't have to worry about this so much, but we've had a very cold spring. That's finally maybe changing, but so lots of rides wearing like arm warmers and leg warmers. And I'm going to throw into the Canal the act of taking off your arm warmers before your leg warmers. If somebody's wearing leg warmers but not arm warmers on a ride, I'm like, what's wrong with that person?
That's a wheel you don't hold on to.
No, yeah,
it's kind of a serial killer move, in my opinion. It's like that person's a psycho.
It's a triathlete move, I think.
Yes. Well, which is the same thing.
Yeah, and it's just like I mean, you're biking, your legs get warm from all the pedaling, so I don't really get it. And actually, as our listeners know, I race cyclocross, and every season there's like 1 or 2 people who do races in leg warmers, but not like when it gets cold, they do races in leg warmers, but not arm warmers. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense at all to me, and it looks really bad.
See, I like that because that's pro, right? That's what the pros are doing that before they get that second to get the handlebar off. Like, you can't do your whole ride, but like,
yeah,
if you do it for a bit, like, okay, he's putting in work. He doesn't have time to get his hands off the handlebar to like shove him in the jersey. He's down. Like, I'm into it for like a little bit, but you can't do your whole ride like that because there's going to be an opportunity you can take them off.
And only if you do it after either you're not wearing leg warmers or after you've taken them off.
So actually, one corollary of that take, Warren, is that if you're wearing bib tights, you cannot be wearing short sleeves with arm warmers because it would give you the option to take off the arm warmers, which we don't want. So if you're wearing bib tights, you have to be committed to the body heat by also wearing long sleeves to at least not give yourself the opportunity to take off the arm warmers.
That's true. I didn't think of that. Like you need to be, you have to just be a sauna rather than do that.
And we also have, and guys, just for the Attaquer guys' benefits, we also have a rule on this podcast that your bidons or your bottles, they have to be 500 milliliters. You cannot, if you're riding road, you cannot have those touring bottles, the 750 milliliters. So if you're wearing bib tights with long sleeves and you're going to be sweating, you got to plan your hydration with those 50 milliliter bottles. So these are all the unspoken rules of cycling that we establish here on this podcast. Obviously,
we maybe don't follow them, but we establish.
We don't always believe in everything we say, but we set the rules is what happens. Okay, guys. So Ben and Stevan from Attaquer, is there anything you'd like to throw in the Canal or into the Sydney Harbour?
If we're still on the theme of winter kit and dressing appropriately in winter, the thing that ticks me off the most, maybe it's my own insecurities that are the issue here, but when I'm dressed in full deep winter kit, and you can question how cold it gets in Sydney, but I will wear a bib tight and I will wear a winter jersey and a gilet and that sort of thing. When I'm dressed to the maximum because I'm freezing my ass off and I see someone who is in full summer kit, no warmers, no leg warmers, no gilet, I'm just mind blown. And I'm like, what are you thinking? Like, what the fuck is going through your mind? How are you not hypothermic? You're in the harbour.
But are you a bit jealous of that? What goes through your mind? Because we have a guy in Europe who joins this podcast sometimes, Harry Ashman. He works for Wahoo in London. And he was saying that one trend that he's seen over in London is young, cool, fast riders are starting to ditch winter kit because it's slower. It doesn't look quite as pro. And they're purposely deciding to go out and ride in January and just freeze their asses off because it doesn't matter. They just want to look cool. They just want to be fast. And that's so when you're looking at that person and you're kind of hating them for wearing the short sleeves in the winter, are you kind of a little bit jealous, or do you just legitimately think they're stupid?
I'm not seeing that person. The guy, the people that I'm seeing are definitely not the fast guy. I think they're the stingy guy, and I'm not trying to sell them more kit. I'm just like,
I was going to say, maybe they need to go to Attaquer because they don't have a long sleeve jersey and bib tights and they want to ride, but that's like all they've got. That's all they've got on hand. And they're just going to like suck up the freezing of it. They just need to shop a little more at Attaquer.
They've just embraced the suffering all the way through winter, and they're not going fast. They're just suffering through the cold.
I think it's the ultimate hard man flex.
It could be.
Yeah.
We actually have the opposite phenomenon in Canada where it'll be like the weather gets warmer, we're coming out of winter, maybe you're in either like just bibs and short sleeves, or maybe it's just like an arm warmer and gilet kind of day. And then there's, without fail, there is one or two, generally older guys, but they're in like deep winter kit and it's like 15 degrees Celsius out, and it's just like without fail, any day in like April, May, you will see one of them. And it's almost the reverse. It's just like, how are you not dying of like heat exhaustion?
I have to admit that's actually me a little bit. I get chilly.
I'm talking about these guys have a balaclava on, the lobster gloves,
okay,
14 degrees out. They're just doing laps of the park. Right?
Actually, you said it's the ultimate hardman flex to be wearing the summer kit in winter, but I don't know, because you guys know Spats, obviously the brand from the UK. The founder of Spats, Tom Barris, he's the ultimate like Northern England hardman, and he's out there covered in neoprene and all, full on kind of military grade winter gear. So I don't know if the hardman is wearing the short sleeves in winter.
Maybe the opposite for your phenomena in Canada, where it's starting to get into almost summer and people are wearing all the deep winter kit. Maybe it's the opposite of the hardman flex. It's like, I'm so self-conscious of my winter kilograms or pounds, I'm covering up all the way through until I shed some of these kilos in the sauna.
I mean, I've got news for these guys. That's not how you lose weight, but yeah, unfortunately.
I mean, I do think that one of the problems for, I don't know, I mean, stuff's been released. I don't know if it's like the way people shop is, and I notice this in Canada too, where it is cold and you think it'd be more on people's minds. It's like people's winter kit is usually awful. Like you'll see someone, you'll ride with them in August. For us, our August, summer, and you'll be like, oh, that guy's kind of stylish. And then like the minute the weather turns, all of a sudden it's like some like baby blue triple XL jacket with like a pair of booties that look like they could be for sailing or surfing or something. Like it just becomes this like random assortment of you know, stuff that looks like they found in a box somewhere. And I feel like people they're not investing enough. They're not thinking enough about their cold weather kit.
It's true.
Ben, you do you have something to throw in the harbor?
Look, if I had it my way, the harbour or the canal would be full of white bibs. White bibs can go in there and not come back.
No.
Yeah.
No. You
Alex
did not
loves
say that.
white bibs.
I love the idea of white bibs. Now, do I own any white bibs? That's an entirely different issue. But Ben, expand on that, please.
Well, I say this, and I feel like all good things you poke fun at, you can only really poke fun if you're guilty of it at some point yourself.
Tom Ford said.
There's a reading from the book of Tom Ford. I rocked white bibs in the past. It probably hasn't been some of my best decision making, but I just don't think they're flattering or look great on anyone except maybe Chippo or like some real
world champion,
slick looking Italian.
You've got to be conscious of stains in certain areas on a white bib. Visible staining.
Yes. Would you say should Alaphilippe do the white bibs? Like, is he cool enough?
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe it's reserved. Reserved. It's like a world champ stripes kind of thing.
Actually, the Australian national champ jersey is mostly white, right? With the green and yellow stripes. So you could rock the white bibs there too. You guys have the weather for it too.
And the tan. You need a good tan.
That's right.
Wait, has Attaquer produced and sold a pair of white bibs? And can I assume that Ben will use his veto power to always say no if someone presents it at the office?
It sounds like it. So next season's just been scrapped. I'm going back to the drawing board.
Okay, well, Stephen Muslin and Ben Stevan from Attaquer, thank you very much. You guys have been very generous with your time. Thanks for coming on Cycling Fashion Week. Please go follow them at Attaquer on Instagram, attackercycling.com. As we mentioned, they've got some pretty cool stuff in the current collection. We'll be looking forward to what else you guys bring to the table in the future. And thanks very much for joining us on the program today, guys.
No, thank you, guys. This has been a lot of fun. It was, great meeting you all.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Good luck.
Okay, that's it for another episode of Cycling Fashion Week. Thanks very much to Stephen Muslin and Ben Stevan from Attaquer Cycling. They've been super nice to get on the podcast and tell their story. Love their stuff. Check them out at Attaquer on Instagram. Attackercycling.com is their website. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Warren, for another episode. And thank you as well to our friends and partners over at leclub.cc. Leclub.cc not only is the host to the world's best and most exciting cycling brands, they're your go-to destination, your one-stop shop for the hottest premium cycling apparel for this season. They've got MAP, they've got Universal Colors, they've got Albion, favorite of ours, they've got Fingers Crossed, they've got Quack, VeloFlex tires, flex on them with those tires, worldwide shipping, fast shipping, amazing coffee, an overall great online shopping experience. Demand more from your cycling experience and go to leclub.cc. We will be back in a couple of weeks with more Cycling Fashion Week. But until then, take care and hopefully see you soon. And check out our podcasts on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. See ya.
Thanks, Alex.